Good morning. It is Monday, August the 26th, and this is The Drill. Thank you very much, and my name is Ronald T. Hardgrove, and this is The Drill, my podcast, and I'm the only true conservative in the United States of America today because I'm the only one that makes the presumption for the status quo. My podcast is about demonstrating how to beat the left each and every day. It's made possible by Spreaker.com. It can be heard on iTunes, Spotify, Google, and YouTube. My email address is storytimes@hotmail.com, and I'm on Twitter at Ronald Hardgrove and on Facebook at The Drill. I started my socio-political odyssey as a conservative Republican. I was taught by the left that I was a conservative because of where I stood on the issues, which sounded reasonable, but whenever I engaged a liberal in debate, I couldn't win. It wasn't until recently that I figured out that I couldn't win because I couldn't be taken seriously. I talked conservative, but I acted left. I used lefty lingo, I dressed like the left, and I engaged in petty vice and associated with people who engaged in vice. People who used drugs, gambled, consorted with prostitutes, stole, and cheated. It was no wonder that the people around me didn't take me seriously. So I realized that defeating the liberals and socialists starts with getting my act together, by talking, dressing, and acting conservative, by being aware of and resisting left-wing counterculture. By becoming a true conservative, I will not only win, I will never lose. And the purpose of this broadcast is to demonstrate how to defeat the left each and every day. So today I am going to be covering, I have a little statement that I wanted to make about the difference between politics and culture. And then after that I'm going to be reading from an article from the Association for Mature American Citizens, AMAC, and it's entitled The Truth on Antisemitism in America, and then I'll make a little commentary. So, all that when I get back. Thank you very much. Welcome back. Politics is once every 2 years. When you go into the voting booth, every 2 years when you go into the voting booth. Culture, however, is every day. Culture is about whether or not you commit petty crimes, consort with prostitutes, abuse drugs, whether or not you engage in vice. The way that you communicate, in other words, how you talk and dress, will largely determine with whom you will associate. And if you associate with, dress like, talk like, people who routinely engage in vice, then so will you. Now imagine telling the vicious people around you that you voted for Donald Trump. The same Donald Trump that supports law enforcement, that is building a wall on the southern border, etc. How do you think that your friends will respond? With incredulity. They will assume that you're lying to them or joking with them. If somehow you manage to convince them of your sincerity, they will shun you. Why? Not because you're conservative, but because you have no integrity, because you're two-faced. Now imagine that you live in the same neighborhood, but you have integrity. You walk your talk. You look, act, and talk conservative. You refuse to engage in petty criminal activity. Imagine then telling your neighbors about voting for Donald Trump. Your neighbors will have respect for you. They may not like how you voted, but they will respect it. You will be accepted in the community, not necessarily popular, but respected. When I come back, I'm going to be reading from the AMAC article, The Truth on Antisemitism in America. Thank you very much. Welcome back. The American, or the Association of Mature American Citizens magazine, and this is the latest issue, August issue of said magazine, and this particular article is called The Truth on Anti-Semitism in America. Anti-Semitism in America is not a new problem, but one with which, with new and unsettling advocates, consequences, and oddly aligned apologists for rising anti-Semitic and anti-Israel sentiment. Objectivity is difficult in highly political, divided, and emotional times, but it is necessary, and never more so than when cultural and religious prejudice against a group of Americans occurs. Prior to World War II, America was deeply divided, arguably more divided than we are today. Broadly speaking, divisions turned on whether Americans should enter the war to save Europe or stand aside. Pearl Harbor and Germany's declaration of war answered that question, and America rose to save Europe. But anti-Semitism was also rife pre-war, with other cultural divisions, and it took decades to wring that poison from our social fabric. Today, in a stupefying display of retrograde behavior, we are witnessing a return to attitudes that have no place in America, namely a resurfacing of anti-Semitism in, of all places, the U.S. Congress. Moreover, rather than admit the wrongness of anti-Israel and anti-Jewish sentiment in the context of who we are, Americans are, a strange pivot is occurring. Members of Congress, especially in the in the party from which anti-Semitic remarks are coming, have gone all but silent. Worse, beyond excusing, ignoring, and tolerating anti-Semitism in the Democratic caucus, some members of which are deflecting conversations away from these remarks and criticizing the president, who is the most pro-Israel and pro-Jewish president in modern American memory. Since facts matter and emotions confuse, distract, and empower prejudice, here are some essential facts. On reading them, you should, in this blessedly free country, reach your own conclusions. On the Democratic congressional side, Representative Ilhan Abdullah Omar, Democrat from Minnesota, first minimalized radical Islamic terrorists attacking America on 9/11, saying, quote, "Some people did something," unquote. She then attacked Americans' support for Israel and its role in the Holy Land as, quote, "allegiance to a foreign state," unquote. She then accused Christian and Jewish supporters of Israel as being bought. After a series of anti-Jewish tropes, she got Democratic House leaders to rewrite the condemnation of her bigotry, leading Democratic leaders to sidestep any reference to her anti-Semitism. That was that. Only such unchecked anti-Semitic remarks have continued. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has consistently declined, at least in public, to condemn, sanction, or otherwise hold accountable Muslim congressional members content with, if not motivated by, overt religious prejudice. Enter next Congresswoman Rashida Harbi Tlaib, a Democrat from Michigan, a Muslim member unapologetic after making bizarre remarks seeming to minimize the Jewish Holocaust, which 75 years ago shocked American soldiers to their core as they liberated Nazi death camps. She then offered a peculiar rewrite of history, attacking the formation of Israel while casting her Muslim ancestors as warmly accommodating, which history reveals they were not. Having defended Omar's remarks, Tlaib distinguished herself further by refusing to back down from her cultural animus, defending those who boycott Israel and failing to condemn those advancing anti-Semitism. The combination of these voices is arresting, the silence afterward more so. With rising violence in synagogues, distinguished Rabbi Evan Moffick succinctly commented on the larger problem. Quote, "The antipathy towards religion that we often see towards the left and that we see growing in this country, it goes hand in hand with the rise in anti-Semitism." This scholar observed that the left is pushing anti-religious sentiment, violence, and perpetuation of, quote, "awful stereotypes," unquote, adding, quote, "When Ilhan Omar says it's all about the Benjamins, baby, and she said Israel has hypnotized the world, she's drawing on these stereotypes that have murdered millions of people in the Holocaust, which just happened 86 years ago. All this would be troubling enough and should send us back to history books to relearn responsible behavior and respect for peaceful religious convictions, but there is more. President Trump has been harshly criticized by the same people for demanding Jewish Americans and Israel, for defending Jewish Americans and Israel. Beyond having an Orthodox Jewish son-in-law and daughter, the president has taken unprecedented steps to support Israel and speak out against anti-Semitism, as has Vice President Pence. Specific actions include instant condemnations of anti-Semitism and deep empathy for victims of anti-Semitic violence. Beyond this, Trump offered visionary speeches on Israel in 2016 and promoting Middle East peace in Saudi Arabia in 2017. In support of America's democratic ally in the Holy Land, Trump recognized Jerusalem as Israel's historic capital, visited Israel direct from Saudi Arabia, hosted the Israeli leader and later the Palestinian leader at the White House, had Secretary of State Pompeo visit the taboo Western Wall, and has resolutely defended Israel's prerogatives while condemning Iran's hostility towards Israel. Trump has convinced Arab leaders, including Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, that he is committed to a fair, enduring peace agreement. Where does all this leave us? On the facts, Democrats in Congress have been overtly anti-Semitic, effectively unsanctioned by their caucus. The left is boldly anti-religious and increasingly unapologetic about hostility toward religion, dovetailing with a rise in anti-Semitism. The president has been empathetic to Jewish Americans and unbridled in support of Israel and the Holy Land. From all this, readers may draw their own conclusions. We live in consequential times and should understand that. So, first of all, the biggest mistake that the author makes, and the author is Robert B. Charles, is that he makes the mistake that I've complained about people on the right making all the time, where he talks about, I'm going to lay out the facts and let the reader decide. No, you don't do that. Don't pretend that you're neutral. Your argument loses a significant amount of power by pretending that you're neutral. And you're not fooling anybody anyways. Everybody knows that you have a bias. Everyone has biases. That's fine as long as you declare those biases up front. Come in and say that I am pro-Israel, I'm whatever the situation may be, and I'm going to go ahead and approach this article from that standpoint or with that particular bias in mind. And tell people, though, that you're going to tell them what you know to be the truth. Know and understand to be the truth. So that's one thing. Also, the article is right and wrong in that it declares anti-Semitism to be wrong, but it is wrong about why. Anti-Semitism is not wrong because it is unpopular or because it is inconsistent with our national identity. Both of those explanations are subjectivistic and wrong. Anti-Semitism is wrong as a matter of fact. As a matter of reality, it is wrong because it is unrealistic, unreasonable, and irrational. Back in a minute. Thank you very much. Who are the true conservatives? They are people that understand that conservatism is not just political but cultural as well. They are patriotic people who use common sense. They make judgments, refuse to speculate, speak clearly and definitively, and are not afraid to say no. They are open-minded, asking why rather than why not. They are consistent, credible, and influential, not ashamed of their existence, unafraid to learn or correct their mistakes. They are normal Americans. And that brings me to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. And until next time, thank you very much for listening and have a great day.